Hi, welcome to Family Matters Conversations with Erica Burten. I'm Erica. I'm a family law attorney. I practice law in Connecticut and New York. And I myself am a divorcee. I've gone through the process and recognize that there are multiple issues that are really important, specifically financial matters. And today, for this conversation, we have Mark Harrison here with us, and he is not only a financial CPA expert, but he's also has a degree in law and has been a litigator. And thank you for being here today, Mark.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
With everything else going on in life, I appreciate you taking out the time to spend it here with us. You have years, and I'm sorry to say this, decades of experience, but in the meantime, you yourself have also gone through divorce.
More than once, yes.
Well, you know,
And I'm proud to say never had a deposition or a court hearing, despite having been reasonably successful. There's a way to do this with elegance and correctly and get a good result without hating each other.
okay. And I agree with that. How were you able to achieve that?
I think the key when people are going through a divorce is to understand what a divorce is about. It's let's take custody to the side because that's something you'll deal with other guests. But with finances, a divorce is about what's the family's net worth and what's the income of the family? And what are the components of it? And how do you separate it in a fair and equitable way that accomplishes the goals of both parties? Most lawyers forget to ask about the goals of both
No, I
parties.
agree with you. Goals are important, and that really should lead the discussion and the process. However, there's other factors involved that you and I both know: anger, distrust.
Absolutely.
I work with clients on how to keep that aspect separate and apart from the financial. It's a business. It's a business. You're breaking up a business essentially.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's an actual business, but it's a family business.
You're correct. And what tends to happen is nice people come to your office and another lawyer's office and they say, I'm angry with my spouse. I don't want to get him angrier. I don't want to get her angrier, but we need to do this right. And they forget that it is the biggest financial transaction of their lives, no matter how much they're worth. It's up to 50% of the net worth of the family. So do it right. Get the right expertise, whether it be a smart lawyer, a smart financial expert, a good mental health professional. Get the right team. And that's the way you go through it without hating each other and without spending more money than you need to by spending money up front to do things the right way.
And I wholeheartedly agree with that. Having your expertise and showing people how to divide those assets. What is the most important factor other than spending more money than you need to, would you tell them to focus on?
To focus on getting people that understand where there can be a difference of opinion. For example, a home can be easily appraised by an appraiser that both sides respect.
Okay.
Businesses, not so easy, especially if there's a cash component. But the best way I can answer your question is with an example. Years ago, I was doing a small case. The husband had a pizza place that was only takeout. And the wife was very concerned what evaluation was going to cost. And I said, for a very small amount of money, I'm going to go interview your husband if his attorney lets me do it. Attorney let me do it. I asked him 10 questions. And after 10 questions, I told him exactly how much he was making. And he said, how did you do that? And I said, it was easy. I used common sense. You told me you do 100% takeout. You told me the average price of a pizza was $15. Then I'd already gotten your business records. I just added up what you spent for boxes, multiplied the number of boxes you bought by $15.95, and could tell you weren't reporting $200,000 a year of income. He's like, oh my God. I said, and if I could figure it out that quickly, so could the IRS. So let's settle this case really quickly before you guys get in trouble. And the case was settled the next day. And I don't think the bill was more than a couple $1,000s, but somebody had to know where the answer lied instead of just doing lots of work for no reason.
Okay. I like that. I mean, and it's realistic because
100%.
right, because the value that you brought to the table, having that expert there to think like that. Not everybody thinks like that. Your skills and your experience allow for that uh, dissection of the business
You
that
know,
does not require $25,000 of accounting work to achieve.
it shouldn't, not because they're dishonest,
Okay.
because it's a small case, they're putting young kids on it, and the young kids don't have the experience to know what the variable that matters really is.
So what do you think for a financial expert is something that is important to look for? One, as an attorney, and also as the client. So what are the things that you would say are the most important factors to have or inquire about for a financial
I
person?
think the question that people should ask is, how long have you been doing it, and how many different lawyers do you work with? When you work with people on both sides of cases regularly, you have credibility. If you've been doing it for a long time, you have credibility with the judges. So having credibility with the lawyers typically means that you've done a good job for the lawyers. So I think that's really the key, is what have been other people's experience, and ask for references, clients, not just lawyers.
Okay.
Who have you represented whose estate might look like mine, who I could have permission to talk to?
Okay. Now, you have a business and you have multiple people working for you of all different ages and levels of experience, correct? Okay. So how does that play into it? So I call you, you assign one of your employees to a case. They might not have the same skill set or level of expertise. What do you do in those situations? Why do you choose somebody who might be younger for a case versus somebody who has more of a skill set than you?
It's trying to balance expertise and billing rate with the needs, but at the same time, that business, in this case, my business, has to have a mentor, a leader who's got his hand or her hand on the pulse of every case. Here's what we're going to do in this case. Go do it. Come back to me with what you see. And so I can spend 5 minutes once a week on a case and keep it on track and keep it efficiently done without actually doing any of the work myself.
Your company is much more tight knit than some of the larger companies, which I particularly like because I always know that when I call and I have a problem, you're always there and available to talk to if there is an issue or a concern.
Well, that's in part because you're nice.
Thank
I
you.
prefer dealing with nice
Nice
lawyers.
people help. It helps to be nice, but also it's true. I mean, you say that, you do have younger people working for you, and I've dealt with them, and they're all very professional and wonderful. But if I have questions, I always know that you're available. And I do think that that's something that does differentiate you from one of the larger companies that is out there that you just might be a number with. So,
Look, it's no secret that I ran one of those. I sold my business to one of those large companies. I ran a national advisory practice for one of those large companies. And when I started this company, when my non-compete was up, my goal was to be a boutique business that offered the services that I know lawyers like you really want. That's hands-on attention from somebody who they know what they're doing, instead of being assigned to somebody who they know nothing about.
right. And that's what I try to offer in my practice as well, which is a small feel, a lot of attention for your clients because they're going through one of, as you said, one of the largest financial transactions of their life, and then also the emotional component as well.
I also, you mentioned something earlier, that if I was looking for a divorce professional, I would want that professional, as crazy as it sounds, to have been divorced him or herself, so they could actually understand what you're going through.
And
And you
I
and I both
yeah,
offer that.
yeah, and multiple. We
Yes.
both have been married multiple times, so
Yeah.
we have very different experiences, and, again, my first divorce was quick. I said it was a really great party. Nothing I was married a year, short, sweet, still in touch, still work with the person. The second one, I had my children with that spouse, and it was a little bit more challenging. But funny enough, I was having that same conversation yesterday with another professional in the industry and how important it is to have the experience. And if you go to a professional that doesn't have that experience of divorce, which you never really wish on anybody, the relatability and understanding the crazy of what you're going through is you can't explain it.
I can talk to a man on the other side of a case and try and convince him in a settlement meeting to pay a certain amount of money in child support or to pay for college education. And invariably, the man will get angry and said, "You got divorced. Did you pay that?" And I would say, "No, I actually paid more. And I got what I got back from doing that voluntarily for my children and my ex was worth more than I ever could have saved in money." People forget, mostly men, not as much women, that if they were still married, they'd be paying for the college. Why are you fighting over college? Because you're mad that your soon-to-be ex-wife found somebody else she loves.
Well, that hurts.
It does. There's no question.
But people can't separate the 2. And that's where having somebody who has the financial expertise is really, in my opinion, is really important. I can tell them, Let's look at the numbers. What are you fighting over? You're talking percentage points. Do you know what those percentage points actually look like? Let's really run the numbers. This is what you're fighting over. This is what it's going to continue to cost to fight over this."
You hit the nail on the head. I tell people, please do not talk in percentages. Structure is more important than percentages. A good team will structure something that will allow both sides to feel like they've won by understanding what you're looking for. I mean, I could do a 50-50 case that completely screws you and benefits me, or I could do a 60-40 division that is better than if somebody got 50-50. Assets have different tax attributes. They have different liquidity. They have different abilities to possibly grow. And all of those things have to be considered. Your original question is, how do you pick an expert? I pick an expert that the mediators respect. Say, that man or woman helps to settle cases. They don't blow up settlements.
Yeah, I like that. The goal is to help the clients get to their end result with as little damage as possible and having the best outcome as possible.
If one of your clients came to me and said, there's a settlement offer on the table, Erica thinks I should take it. What do you think I should do? I would say, ask Erica the following. If God forbid you tried the case, what's the best you could do? What's the worst you could do? And how much will it cost you to get there? And
100%.
as soon as you get the answer to those 3 questions, you'll know whether that settlement is in that soft spot that's better off than moving forward.
Yes, but you and I have both experienced the client that says, "I'd rather give it to the professional than give it to the ex."
And
And that is in my opinion, the hardest case to settle.
it is, but and I know you know this is more for the audience. A lot of business owners, men or women, view a divorce as a business transaction. A lot of non-business owners view it as a very emotional topic. So when somebody is not emotionally ready to settle their case, there's nothing you and I can do to make them
No, you
settle that
can't go
case.
faster than
So
the slowest moving car.
sometimes we have to just slow pay things until their therapist can get them in the right place where they're ready to settle a case.
Assuming they have a therapist.
Well, if they don't, they probably
They
anybody
need to
that goes through a
so
divorce and doesn't have a therapist is making a mistake.
100%. So what are some of the most common financial mistakes people make in their divorce, especially high net worth clients?
So I think the mistake that people make is not understanding where the income has come from and where it's likely to come from. Years ago, so we're in Connecticut, so we'll do a real Connecticut story. I represent a guy who owned the company that had all the cigarette vending machines in the bars and restaurants. He was making a lot of money.
So this was a really long time ago.
It was. But then the couple got divorced at the same time that Connecticut made it illegal to smoke in bars and restaurants. Well, what do you think that business is worth now?
Plummeted.
Nothing. Because the fact is, these historical cash flows had nothing to do with the future cash flows.
Okay.
Tomorrow, I'm going to a mediation, I won't say too much, about it's a private equity case about a couple that's made this. His income is about to go boom. And the way I like to explain it to a mediator is during the marriage, we bought a house, we cleared the lot, we planted a tree, we fertilized the tree, and now the first pear is coming off the tree. And somebody's saying the value of the tree is the one pear. No, there's going to be 1,000 pears that are going to come off because of what happened during the marriage. And the mistake that people make is they look at historical earnings and translate that automatically to the future. And you could be hurting yourself by thinking the number is going to be too low or hurting yourself by thinking the number is going to be too high. So there's got to be a real understanding of the components of the family's income. Where are they coming from? How sustainable are they? Because if you and I work together and settle a case, and then a year later, both parties are coming back to redo something because something didn't work out, there probably wasn't the right understanding as to what was causing the income and what the risks on a go-forward basis were.
How do you explain that to the spouse who isn't involved
It's
in that
it's
business?
easy. It's like anything else, when you go out, like, you look magnificent today.
Thank you.
So if you were to go out, you would probably look at 4 different things on yourself that are the most important thing that you define as looking good for you at a particular time. Well, looking at finances is the same thing. What are the 4 biggest components of the family's variable income or variable act?
Right.
And you have to understand what causes the ups, what causes the downs, where the risks are to the payor spouse or the payee spouse, and make decisions. How are we going to settle this in a way that addresses the wife's need for security and addresses the husband's fear of how am I going to pay
Pay
these
for
bills?
that, which I think is a very common component.
But how am I going to do it?
Right. Well, that's the question. And my answer always is, I don't know how you're going to do this, but I will tell you, you are going to be okay. And multiple ways. If it's a high net worth case, believe it or not, people are still terrified, I find. And I still have to manage their expectations as to what life is going to look like because it might be different than what they were living before because they're concerned about generational wealth versus living in the moment, having enough money for the rest of their lives and to the lifestyle that they have lived, and how to manage their expectations in that regard as to what that's going to look like after a divorce agreement. But people who live very differently together as an intact family versus after is also something that's very difficult. And I wonder how you um, from a financial person dealing with mediation as well, because you're not just working one on one with a client sometimes. Sometimes your role is to help two clients come to an understanding of the finances.
Yes.
Okay. And when you do that, there's usually one client that has much more involvement in a business or in the finances than the other spouse. And how do you then temper the expectations of the less financially knowledgeable spouse to the other spouse who has an exceptional amount of knowledge of the business and everything else and knows how everything runs, and whether or not it has the actual value that the non-moneyed spouse thinks it has?
It's earning the respect of that person. And as a financial professional, when I first meet somebody, I'm beginning to build their confidence in me. And I have to build that confidence from day one. So when the conversations get difficult, they have some trust, they have some faith. And then you also address it through creativity. A lot of times what I'll say to a woman, a mother of children, when she says, "What should I be scared of?" You should be scared that when you get divorced, your husband's going to remarry a younger woman and have more children. And this wealth that you created together might not go to your children.
Children.
So then we can use estate planning creatively within settling a divorce. We can
Do you
take
do that a lot?
a lot, and it's amazing to me how many people do not do it. Let's say two people are apart by X number of dollars. They have to have a little bit of money for this to work.
Of course.
X amount of dollars. Well, we can take that difference, stick it in a trust, accomplish some estate planning goals, and assure that the income is used for the intact family, but that money, the principal, will never go to anyone other
Other
than the
than the family.
children of the current marriage. And it helps to bridge settlement gaps sometimes by saying, "Ooh, let's save some estate tax dollars."
Okay. In this conversation, you've already discussed some of the very interesting factors and cases that you've worked on. What are some of the most fascinating cases that you've worked on, and what made it fascinating to you?
So, my favorite story, and it is my favorite story, is I was representing the son-in-law of a sitting vice president of the United States who will remain nameless.
Okay.
His wife had some major issues, which we kept completely confidential. It was in a state where you could get it titled anonymous, be anonymous. My client had plenty of money. He didn't want to hurt the mother, but there was a custody issue that was real. We tried mediation, it failed. And then my phone rang. My assistant buzzes me and says, somebody claims the vice president of the United States wants to speak to me. Okay. Goes on. And I said, Mr. Vice President, sir, you realize I don't represent your daughter. I represent your son-in-law. He said, I know, but she said at the mediation, you were the only one that got it. So I called to tell you what the right answer should be. And I interrupted him and I said, but Mr. Vice President, sir, you don't know all the facts. Very respectful. He kept going and tried to bully me. And I took a deep breath and I did what I knew I had to do. I said, Mr. Vice President, sir, with all due respect, you're being an effing a-hole.
Ah,
And he says to me, nobody talks to me that way. I said, Mr. Vice President, sir, I just did. If you love your daughter, you tell her A, B, C, and D, because I can get my guy to take that. And that is the best resolution for your daughter. And he's like, how dare you? And he slammed the phone on me. 3 days later, the case settled exactly like I told him what to do. But I knew that his power was so ingrained in his head that if I didn't treat him differently than everybody else treated him, he would have gotten it. And he was the one standing in the way of the settlement, not his daughter. It was his
okay.
ego. So I had to get outside the box.
But I also think as much as that is, you know, fabulous and very, celebrity, that is also quite common in ordinary
It
cases
sure
as
is.
well.
It sure
There's
is.
usually another party that is getting in the way sometimes of the settlement of the two people. They can't see straight, and you need to speak to them differently than anybody else would have spoken to them, because otherwise you're not going to make any movement.
You're right. So how do you handle this one? I'm turning the script on you.
Sure.
How do you handle this one? Your client comes in, you talk to her a bunch of times, and then you find out the advisor she cares about most, who she goes to for advice, is not you, it's her psychic. You bring the psychic in, or what are you doing?
Haha, I don't know. That would be a new one. I would ask if the psychic's really good because I think that would be interesting, and I would like to go and see her for myself or him for myself. Yeah. No, that would be that would be a hard
But you're
one.
right. People listen to all different kinds of people during divorces. They're not always listening to those they should be listening to.
No, no, and I always say that to clients, I appreciate that you have an entourage of people who have opinions, but you hired me for a reason, and I'm here to advise only you, and I have the expertise, which also involves bringing in the right people to your team. And, working with professionals like yourself only elevate my practice and only help my clients because of the fact that I am able to give them knowledge that every friend, family member, vice president might be giving them for that situation.
But the difference is, and this is part of what differentiates you, is that you're human. You genuinely care about people. And not every divorce lawyer genuinely cares about people. Some of them are jaded through careers that have gone on too long and a bunch of bad clients. I've seen it. You establish relationships with your clients where they trust you. They know you're really only looking out for their best interest, and that's hard to find.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do try to not only represent my clients that way, but live life that way. I mean, and I think that goes the same for you. It's trust. And I think some of that is an initial, what's the word? Just an impression of somebody. Has nothing to do with how you are as a professional. It's who you are as a person. Because the personal component, who you are, your essence is what really people gravitate towards and what people trust. Yes, your knowledge is wonderful. You are an expert. You have every credential you could possibly want. You have the experience. But if you, meaning Mark, aren't who you are, people aren't hiring you. And this is one of the most personal things that people are going through, as you and I both know.
Right.
And you need somebody who's gonna, tell it straight to you.
Not only advocate for you, but tell you when you're wrong.
Right.
We both have to do this to people. We have to say, I know you want this, but it's not the way the law
No,
works. It's not a reasonable
no,
expectation.
no, you can't have it. Like, and you might be right? Morally, ethically, principled, that might be correct. But that's not how this works. Just because they left, you said earlier, they left you for somebody else. I'm sorry, that hurts. But that doesn't mean they don't get child support.
Right.
You have kids. Or, and you said you were able to walk away with your head held high from your divorce. And I feel the same way. Wasn't necessary. We're never our best selves. We're in the worst circumstances that we have been in other than other times, but you're still able to walk away with your dignity and who you were as a person still stood true. When you practiced law, how did you get into practicing law? And when you practice law, how was it different from what your role is now so much with
So
regards to client relations?
it's a fascinating question because I sort of practice law, but I actually went back to law school nights as a full-time CPA because I knew if I was going to be the very best at what I did, I had to know all sides of it. So, and then when I got done with that experience, my practice was very unique. While I was the expert and I'm not allowed to be an advocate, I wasn't the guy that got thrown out of the meeting when they were talking about custody. I was standing there because I have enough knowledge and develop enough of a rapport with my clients that when you and I together are telling the guy, you know, don't get hung up on 50% custody. 6 days every 2 weeks is not that much difference than 7 days every 2 weeks.
And also, what's realistic?
Correct. Be careful what you ask for. You might get it.
Yes, 100%.
Right.
100%. And, that's why I personally like doing an interim parenting plan from the beginning to see if this is actually going to work. And, when you're working with attorneys and you're doing these high complex issues, what do you find is the biggest financial impact on these families of the divorce? And how can people, we've spoke previously about how you can limit the professional fees and the time that it drags on. Otherwise, what else could people do to protect themselves from the financial impact?
There's no way to protect yourself from the financial impact because there is going to be a financial impact. It's to try and understand what's most important to you. Some people believe that they need stability in the home, and maybe a mother wants to keep the home no matter what until the children get to college. Some people care more about short-term cash flow. Some people care more about their retirement. It's understanding what the client really finds to be important, and then I care about what the other side finds to be important. Because sometimes if what they find to be important is different from what my client does, we can trade off, but don't just give up because we can trade it for something. Just because you don't want it, don't say you can have it.
Right.
Let's make it part of a global settlement where we get something in return. So, I mean, I think that's the most important thing is to understand short term, long term. Is lifestyle important? Is the house important? I mean, I told a dear friend of mine, he was thinking about divorce. I said, "You're never going to be able to get divorced." He said, "Why not?" "You won't be able to go one Christmas without your kids. So the thought of having your kids be away from you every other Christmas, you can't live with it. He thought about it, he said, "You're right." And they didn't get divorced till the kids were older because he never would have been able to handle it.
And that has nothing to do with finances.
Nothing to do with finance.
Nothing to do with finance. And that's two components there that I wanna talk about. One is, the silver divorce. It naturally is lending itself. And people are saying there are more and more silver divorces, which some people might be familiar with, might not be familiar with. Silver is respecting to the age that your hair is silver, that people are getting divorced later on in life and having these later divorces. And I think there's two components to it. One, I think people are getting married later, so it inherently lends itself to having silver divorces, whereas people previously would get married much younger. There's a bandwidth of length of marriage that people can stick it out for, and then they get divorced. But from a financial standpoint, how are you seeing that impact on people's decision making to get divorced?
We tried a New
Or
York case for 100 days a number of years ago on a couple that had been married for 57 years. 100 days of trial. 50 they were in their 80s. He had a girlfriend. He wanted his girlfriend. She was like, "You can have your girlfriend, but you're not taking any of my artwork." So we tried it for 100 days. And all she cared about was the artwork. She goes, "If I lose, we'll appeal it. He'll be dead before he gets any piece of my artwork." And
and then she'll get everything
it
through the estate
they
process.
they each had something that was important to them enough to fight about.
Got it.
And I think, look, we all know that a lot of men, when they get older and get divorced, date younger women. So a lot of men and a lot of women date younger men too at the same time.
Yes,
But a lot of men get to a certain age, and if they're unhappy because their wife has maybe aged emotionally more than they have, they're comfortable moving on.
that's interesting that
It's
it's
just,
the emotional component.
yeah, people
And
age
it's so
differently.
funny. I think people think it's a this is getting off subject a little bit, that men date younger women because they're biologically younger, they're might be more attractive, but you're saying it, and this is very interesting to me, and I don't disagree, is that women mature at a different rate than men, and that it's a maturity standpoint that also is involved. That is so fascinating.
Yeah, I really think that's a big part of it.
I'm sure you're
S
right, but as a woman who is in that situation, who is, dating men of different ages and you dating women of different ages, never did I think that the men would be so vastly far. I mean, one of the reasons, and this is again off subject matter, is that I got divorced is because I had far outgrown and matured my ex-husband. And there was a lack of growth on his side. So for me, I was like, I can't stay in this because we're in different places and we're never going to catch up.
You and I both sometimes have to teach our clients that it's okay that you're getting divorced. It doesn't mean you failed. It means that chapter of your life has now ended and it's time to look forward to the next chapter. And both sides can be happy and the children can be healthy. It doesn't have to be a failure. Sometimes it's just the end of a chapter of a life.
It's funny. Yeah, you're right. 100%. I called a friend actually. It was my first ex-husband, who's also a divorce attorney now, who I also work with. And I said, I'm getting divorced. You do New York law. I have a couple questions. He's like, well, how long have you been married? I said, 15 years. Well, that's a pretty good run.
Right.
That's a pretty good run. I thought to myself, he's not wrong. It is. 15 years is a long time to be at something. And if it's not working, to have gone through. And I say that to my clients now. And, all of our experiences bring us back to where we are and who we are now. And I would never change any of my experiences. And some of the advice that you get and you bring with you, like you're saying now, to tell our clients, you're not a failure. What advice would you give to somebody who is considering divorce or just starting the process, both from a financial standpoint and from a personal standpoint?
That's such an interesting question because I think that too many people say, I want to get divorced because I'm not happy. And they don't look at what's their life going to look like after divorce. So they know their life's not perfect now, but after divorce, more times than not, the financial consequences are not as favorable to you as staying married. You're supporting two households. That's
It
more
can't be.
expensive.
It can't be the same.
Correct.
It's
Unless there's
impossible.
oodles and noodles of money, it can't be the same. So what you have to say is, I know this isn't perfect, but are you sure you want to get divorced? Are you sure that's going to be better? The dating pool isn't so wonderful. The finances aren't so wonderful. Have you tried marriage counseling? Have you really reached a point in your life where you're certain your life's going to be better? It's different if they've met somebody else. But so many people have a fight about something, and the fight goes on for 3 years because no one will forgive the other one. And they end up getting a divorce, and they're more miserable after they were divorced than if they just tried really hard to work through it. You can't fix it,
No.
but sometimes you can make it tolerable and
Sometimes
maybe end up
better.
with a better life. Yeah, maybe end up with a better
Better.
life.
Yeah.
So I don't, despite the fact I make money if they get divorced, I will oftentimes tell people,
I
why don't
do
you
the
go back
exact
to
same.
marriage counseling and give it one more shot?
I always ask people if they have been through counseling, if there's any shot in changing it, and I have saved multiple marriages in the process of people coming to me for divorce.
Right, right.
First of all,
But that's being not only a good divorce lawyer, but being a true family lawyer because you place the family before your own
100%.
personal
You have
financial
to.
gains.
You have
Yes.
to. And I do this to help people just like you do. I mean, yes, we make a living off of it, which is what everybody's doing in this world. But you want to be able to lead your life well lived and centered and comfortable with what you're doing. And I don't know about you, but from what I do know about you, you want to help people. That's why you go into this field, especially that is so, so emotional and at times so toxic, and people are struggling. And you go to help people. That's the goal. At the end of the day, whether it's helping them to stay in an intact family, whether it's to redefine what family looks like for them, you are there to help them process the situation, not to your benefit.
I agree. Our reputations are tied to our business careers, and we want to be known as good people. And I know you and I are both known as good people.
Yeah. And I think that is, at the end of the day, what allows for a lasting career. I am only as strong as my name.
Reputations take decades to build, and they could be destroyed in an instant.
Exactly. Mark, thank you so much for being here today. This was invaluable for me, and I'm sure the audience will get so much from the information that you provided to them. And as always, it's wonderful seeing you.
Well,
So I
thank
hope
you.
to see you again soon.
It's a pleasure, and I appreciate you asking me. It's been my pleasure, so thank you.
Thank you. Follow Family Matters with Erica Burten on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And join me for conversations that help you navigate this transition with clarity and compassion.